Hello and welcome to Washington Policy on the Go. My name is David Bose. I'm the Communications and Marketing Director here at Washington Policy Center. And we come to you every other week with Washington Policy on the Go. In fact, 2 weeks ago, it was Liv and I in the same room at the same time. She's the only one willing to appear with me in studio. No, I'm just kidding. But as coincidence would have it, we're back together again. Real quickly, while we let some participants file in, 2 weeks ago, I started a little early last time. That was my bad. Totally my fault there. I blame it on brain freeze stuck in the Seattle traffic for a while, so that's basically it. But I did want to let you know that our new issue of Viewpoint is out. And if you're not a subscriber, if you're not a member of Washington Policy, one, you should be, and then you'd have it in the mail. But if you haven't been, you can get it online at our website, washingtonpolicy.org. There's some new and exclusive op-eds in Viewpoint this time. So there's original material that hasn't been seen anywhere else on our web pages or anything like that. So you can check that out. We have a really compelling op-ed piece from the BIAW about the impact on housing costs based on some new regulations involving the ban on natural gas. And we have a really interesting op-ed about Seattle schools, which will bring us to one of the topics that we'll be covering today, which is the announced closure of public schools. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Go to our website again at washingtonpolicy.org and check out that material. And then also, it doesn't do us any good if we share the material with you and you don't share it. So I want to remind everybody, if you see something you like, it doesn't have to be the long form video that we have here. But when we get this video uploaded on YouTube, we'll also have it cut up into smaller, socially shareable little bites that we have. There's a great program that we use to do that. And so I'd encourage you to share any pieces that you find compelling and do the same thing with our research, because we really rely on you to amplify the voice of WPC and make sure that this information spreads. You know, knowledge is power. Knowledge allows people to, when they want to be active, when they want to be civically engaged, they can do so with the information that they need to have the truth on their side and to make the compelling case and to force the hand of public officials and to hold them accountable. So we want to make sure that you help us with that as well. So I'd encourage you to do that. So we've given people a chance to hop on a bit. Liv, welcome back again. And it's great to be here in studio with you.
It's great.
It's kind of fun. It's a great camera, great environment here. So let's start with the announced closure of several Seattle public schools. And this is, that they're saying, hey, we don't have the budget. We got to make this cut. And it's impacting thousands of younger students in the Seattle area, which I'm just picturing, as a parent, the trauma of all these different parents trying to figure out what are they going to do if their kid has to be shipped across town to a strange school, a new strange environment. They lose that parent connection that they've made, which is a social and play date and other things for the parents as well as the child. So not to mention the investments that they've made in these local schools. So one, let's talk about, why is this happening? And then is the reason given true? And then we'll get to some of the other things about how this might be handled. But, why are they saying this closure is happening? And when did it start?
Well, it's amazing to watch this because the Seattle Public Schools has a budget of $1.17 billion, which translates to $23,498 per student, the wealthiest district in the entire state. And the superintendent there, Brent Jones, has said that he has a $100 million budget shortfall, which is entirely man-made. You'll recall there was a strike in 2022, closing the schools in the fall of 2022, closing the Seattle Public Schools. The teachers union demanded a big pay raise. I think it's a 7% pay raise that they got as a result of this strike. And that's one of the contributing factors to this $100 million shortfall.
This was a strike right after schools have been closed for the better part of 2 years.
It just seared in my brain because here, the children needed open schools more than anything to catch themselves up from the damage that was inflicted on them. It's innocent victims of the fear of adults closing the schools longer than they should have been for many, many more months than they should have been. And the first thing that happens is that they close the schools again. So it was just another outrageous, illegal strike. And, you know, it was over in 5 days and they had reached an agreement, which makes people really wondering, did they have an agreement to do this before, you know, behind closed doors? Is this all a kabuki dance to get more money for the union? And so that's what ended up happening. And now fast forward today, they're threatening to close the last couple weeks ago, the superintendent announced that that in order to balance, purportedly to balance this budget, they're going to close 20 elementary schools in the Seattle area.
Now,
that's
sorry to interrupt, but if I remember at the time of the 2022 issue, I recall you writing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I remember you writing that the proposal that they made was not, it didn't balance out, that they didn't have the money to give what they were saying, and they were just kind of betting on getting more money in the future.
Oh,
is that
yeah,
right?
yes, but this is what this district has been doing for some time. They have, I actually think, well, they have been able to run down to their friends in the legislature. They don't seem to be concerned about passing a budget that's in deficit.
So they promise more than they have.
Yes.
And then they're able to say, look, we've got this giant hole here.
Yes.
Which is a hole of their own making.
Yes.
And then they act like it's a big crisis that, you know,
Right.
somehow they lost money when.
Well, like a tornado hit them.
Yeah.
You know, like they couldn't add and subtract the numbers and discover for themselves that they were promising more money than they had money for. I mean, this is pretty elementary math. And most people should be able to do this. They're being paid good salaries. The superintendent makes over $300,000 in very generous pay package. They have a whole budget office in the Seattle Public Schools that's supposed to be able to help balance the budget. They knew that they were going into the red when they gave out this money, and they knew they were going to, well, I don't know what they thought about how they were going to get that money, but remember the COVID funding, they also got extra federal money during COVID,
Right.
And that money is running out. And everyone is saying, well, the money is running out. They did, as if they didn't know that was temporary one-time money from the federal government. So this is just another example of incompetence. By a public system that cannot be held accountable by the people, no matter what you do, you know, unless you change the makeup of the state legislature and hold them accountable.
So with this red ink of their own creation here, is there anywhere else that they've cut, or is the school closure like response number one that we've seen?
Well, they say they're going to cut $7 million from the central district budget, which is peanuts of the amount of money that they're spending in that central budget. I've looked at the budget over and over again. It shows it's actually a unique budget that anybody can go to online and look at it. The Seattle Public Schools budget only delivers $643 million of its $1.1 billion budget to the schools. It actually breaks out how much the schools are spending from the total budget. So you can subtract 643 from 1.17 billion. That balance of over $500 million is what is being spent in the central district offices. So to say that the Seattle Public Schools is bloated, the central office is bloated spending, is an understatement. And so for any cut to be made to a student program to balance this budget shows you that the top priority of this district is to keep those central offices well-staffed and funded, not to keep the schools open. We have this over and over again. We've seen this over and over again. This is such an old thing. It just happened in Edmonds. They're cutting a program for band up there because they say they can't balance their budget. So this is what they do. They cut programs for children to demand more money for themselves. And it is an element of public education that the same pattern follows, you know, over and over again. The taxpayers give a lot more money to the public schools, yet what they do is they fund their own priority programs, not the programs that educate the children best. So it's just, this is why.
But you took this information and you blogged about it, and you said, hey, here's a thought. Instead of closing these schools, how about you do something else? Tell us about you know, your line of reasoning here, because I thought it was a pretty clever idea.
Well, I have to give credit where credit is due. It was Paul Guppy, my vice president. He was formerly our vice president for research, who had this idea. And of course,
Are you election denied now? Poor Todd.
It was
It's going to be a
Biden
Trump.
who is my boss?
No, just,
Todd is now our vice president for research, and he really liked the idea too. So I put this in a blog. It's
just a side note for people to understand here. Paul actually, this is available on, we have an interview with Paul in the latest edition of Viewpoint 2. Paul requested a change of status so that he could write more. So Todd has taken over as vice president of research, and they arranged that together. And then Stephen, our new president, approved that. So that's how that came out. We're just having fun about the controversy.
Yeah, they were teasing, who is my boss exactly? Anyway, so Paul had this idea. So we put that, and of course, I thought it was a great idea because as I don't know if I actually told you this, but I've been telling a lot of people this. I have researched, of course, a lot on public charter schools, and in California, which has hundreds of charter schools, 30% of the charter schools in California are actually formerly traditional public schools that turned themselves into a public charter school by a volunteer group of parents getting together to be the board for the charter school and applying to the state for a charter school contract, which could happen here if we tweak the law. And so these families who are standing to lose their public charter school, their public traditional school in the Seattle Public Schools, could form a group and to volunteer to run their school themselves and apply to the state for a charter contract and get the money from the state to run that school and perhaps even get the building, because under the charter school law charter schools have the right of first refusal to occupy a traditional public school building. And this would meet the needs of the families in that school to keep their school intact for their children. They could form their own board to run, let's say, Decatur Elementary School, one of the schools on the list that is slated for closing. It has a high capacity, highly capable program for children there, and it is being targeted for closing. The families are very upset about that. Those families could band together and apply to the state for a charter to run Decatur Public School independent of the local district. And that board could hire its own principal, and the same principal if they like him, and that principal could hire the same teachers if they like those teachers, and run that school independently of the district. And that is the beauty of charter schools, is it allows for the flexibility, independence of these central district officials who are, thinking about their own central district budgets and not keeping schools open.
I would just love to see this happen. I would but I thought there was a restriction on whether or not new charter schools could open.
Yes. It's another man-made restriction which could easily be changed. Okay. And if we had a group of 20 independent groups, families from the Seattle public school area petitioning to the state legislature to change the law to allow new charter schools, that could certainly happen. We have a whole infrastructure in place.
That was part of the original law. It was expecting more, and then they put up so many obstacles that people just gave up, and they said, well, I can't get through this red tape.
Yes.
If they set that to the side for all these, that would be great, because it's in Seattle. It's the heart of the educational establishment power there. Yes. To have them say, look, we got to prioritize keeping these schools open.
Yes.
That would really be something.
How do we keep the schools open? Yeah. How do we keep the communities intact? I mean, the local public school is almost bigger than, it's the emblem and the symbol of the community, and the connections in the community to each other, and the affection that families have for the teachers in the schools, because it isn't just 1 year that they have the child in the school. They think of their first grader. They think about their first grader having a favorite third grade teacher. They want to keep that option open for their children. To see it close down it fractures the community. It makes them distrust the public schools. And here's a way to keep this all public. Charter schools are public. You could, instead of passing laws to let school choice through, letting the public dollars go to a private school, let the public dollars go to a public charter school. It keeps it all in the family. And so the tweak would have to be done because what our current law has had a 5-year period of allowing charter schools to open between 2016 and 2021, and we were going to have 40 charter schools, as you recall.
Right.
We only have 18 public charter schools in our state. That gives us 22 more slots, just about the same number of schools that are threatened to be closed in Seattle Public Schools. We could, anyway, so you could easily change that law to extend the authorization period for another 10 years, let's say, and actually lift the cap so you could have more than 40
I was about to say,
schools.
plenty of
And
states that
you
just-
could also, at the same time, you could fix the discriminatory funding practice where we don't give charter schools access to local levy funding. And you could fix the problem with their not getting housing, because now existing public charter schools have to use their operating funding to pay rent with, which is of course unfair. And you could fix all those problems all at once. It would be a beautiful thing and an upgrowth, a grassroots sort of upswelling. Let's not let the mismanagement of the Seattle public school budget hurt the children of Seattle. Let's take an option that is there in state law that just needs to be tweaked a little bit with the help of your local Seattle representatives. They could do that.
We need to do a step-by-step guide for parents there.
Oh.
This is the steps that need to be taken to make this happen.
It's already on our website, okay?
Even better.
So I wrote a long time ago when we passed the law, I said how to open a charter school. I'm sure if you go to our website, you could find that again. I think it was written in I don't know, maybe it was 2016. It's a little bit old now, but it's not complicated. You apply. You get a group behind you. It's basically, imagine you're going to open a school like a private school, except this is a public school. You form a committee of volunteer members, and you decide to write an application to the state. And there is an existing Washington State Charter School Commission, which will help you through the process. And you can just give them a call and say, how do we do this? And
we just have to add the step of the legislature currently has this cap. So this is you need.
Oh yes,
yeah.
You would have to
this
call
would have to be lifted first.
Representative Noel Frame and Senator Jamie Peterson and all the Democrats that represent this area and say that this is your top priority and that you wish to have your local Seattle public school turned into a public charter school. And what could be better? Then we would not face the anger and resentment and frustration and damage to the public education system that closing 20 elementary schools would inflict unnecessarily on Seattle.
Well, we could add too that the most recent study showed that charter school kids were doing better. All other things being equal, we're doing better than
most definitely. Oh, the State Board of Education has now come out with a great report saying that. And so there's no longer any question, because charter schools are independent of all this overreach from the central district and from many laws that hurt the education of children. Charter schools can deliver a better product, and they are. And so that is why it's the most exciting reform that we've passed in Washington State, really. And it's on the books. We have a superstructure all in place. The Charter School Commission is still there. There are people still appointed to it. They're still reviewing charter school performance, and it would be easy to do. It could be done very easily.
So let's switch gears right now for another blog that you set up about an anonymous letter that was sent that revealed a stunning revelation that Washington Policy Center and other groups were upset by some of the leftist, the farther left ideological stuff that was entering into the schools.
Yes.
And by the way, there's plenty of people that are not on the far right that are upset about. They're not on the right or far right about being upset with things going into public schools that go well beyond what is traditionally thought of as the basics, so to speak. Yeah. So tell us about this anonymous letter. Where did it go, first of all, and how you became aware of it?
Well, I got a call from a reporter named Grace Chang, I think her last name is, at the Washington State Standard. And she said, have you seen the anonymous letter attacking you and the Washington Policy Center? And I said, no, I have not seen the anonymous letter from probably one person. Now, the letter, she sent it to me, and it was addressed to the media and other interested people with no return address, no name, no signatory. And it was claimed to be a group of Washington school board members, but it could have been one person.
Yeah.
We don't even know if it actually was a Washington State School Board
Well,
elected
used to
member.
they, them. They could go with the them.
Who
Who knows? Who knows?
It could have been completely made up. They could have claimed to be a member of Washington, an elected school board member, and not been one. So we don't know. There's no way to check that. And that letter attacked. It attacked school board members who are elected to represent their school districts in 13 different school districts that are pushing back against the radical laws that the state legislature passed on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll recall I've written a lot about how bad those laws are and how they violate the individual civil rights of people. And so there's been groups that have been we just have written about it. We write and put our research up on the website for anyone to use. And so this anonymous letter writer said we were creating this cabal of conservative school board members, and we had nothing to do with any cabal. It's a smear. And in the letter, it actually said it's going to set education policy back 50 years. And that was an attack on Washington Policy Center and on me, calling me a racist from an anonymous letter writer. And this was actually published in the Washington State Standard, which is weird. So I think it's hilarious because it shows that one person possibly is afraid that there are people, wherever they come from, that are opposing the radical turn to the left to indoctrinate children in lies in the public schools. This is not a right, left, or center issue. This is a development that threatens the very foundation of public education. When you're starting to teach children lies, you are going to have families pulling their kids out of public education, which we're seeing. 46,000 have pulled their kids out of the public schools in Washington State. Part of the reason why they're upset, they're closing these schools, is that they have a drop of enrollment in the Seattle Public Schools. And why do you think that is? The Seattle Public Schools has dropped its standards in many ways. It's not focusing on reading and writing, teaching children the truth. And so therefore, this is what you're getting. And so now what I actually see from this is I'm encouraged because it shows that reasonable people across the state of Washington oppose teaching children lies in the public schools. And, the cover they're using is diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's actually racism. They're teaching children to look at each other through the lens of race. It's hateful, it's harmful, it hurts the education of children. It has to be purged from our schools. It's being purged from the corporate sector, as you can see. You've seen that the businesses that were getting this ESG ratings are now pulling back on that. They're seeing it's hurting their bottom line. They've quickly seen that DEI is bad for them, and they're firing their DEI staff. But it's still stuck in the public education sector and the higher education sector. And now we're seeing school board members in the Washington State School Directors Association who are opposing this gain power. More and more school board directors are running and getting elected to school board in their districts who oppose teaching children lies in the schools. So this is what we're getting is a blowback from the people who are trying to push this on public education. And I just think it shows that we're winning. We're winning the battle here.
Well, it's funny when people talk about a secret of some kind where, where they're secretly trying to change school boards. You provided some guidance for school board members, and we published it on social media and promoted it on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
about the laws.
It was in all our publications. Yeah, like learn about the laws, learn about how what you have to do as a school board member versus what the state can tell you to do and what they don't have the right to tell you to do. And so, but it's all very open. And and so it's funny how when you do these kinds of things and you're publicizing them, and then others run around and they use the language of some kind of a secret plot in order to preemptively.
Well, it's a smear.
Yeah, they're just trying to make it like something else.
They're trying to destroy your reputation. They're trying to make you look like you're the one telling lies when they, in fact, are using anonymous letter writers to promote a smear. I mean, objectively speaking, that is no way to have a debate in a democratic country. Well,
it's a way not to have a debate.
Well,
the newest
that's a
thing.
good way to put it.
Well, one of the newest things about politics and policy debates I've noticed is there's the first attempt is to smear the opponent so badly that one should not even listen to them at all. And that way you don't have to talk about the merits of their argument. If you've defined that person as an evil person, and they want evil things, and then there's no point in having that discussion. And so it's not an effort to be a part of the debate or win a debate. It's an effort to preempt a debate and to prevent a debate from happening, which is really a dangerous thing in many ways, because it's become such a pervasive tactic. I see it anyway. It's become such a pervasive tactic that I think it corrodes civil discourse and the ability for people to try to, to talk with one another and generate a discussion about what the truth is and what the appropriate course of action is.
It is a very dangerous and totalitarian effort to silence people who you don't agree with. And so if you're listening to each other, you don't call each other names, right? How in any human interaction, when you call someone names,
just to shut down the conversation.
It's not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to be able to educate children any better if you're calling each other names. And so it just shows you the cowardice of their whole effort has to be done through this secretive, nasty backdoor method to silence opponents. And I'm actually quite encouraged to see that people are just saying, I'm not going to do that.
I wonder
I'm not going to do that.
I wonder if when they were trying to smear WPC with racism, if they were referring to our advocacy for charter schools that tend to disproportionately help children who are minority children, immigrant children, and others, with results that are better than the traditional public schools, as is evident by the latest report.
I just think it's just the law of projection. They are the people, these members in these, if it truly is one school board member who was elected to some school board, he represents the interests in the system that pass laws that disproportionately hurt low-income minority Black and brown children going to public charter schools. They hate WASDA, the organization WASDA that these school board members are all are part of. They actively advocated against charter schools during the charter school fight. They support policies that have an impact that disproportionately hurts children who are low income, Black and Hispanic children. So they have no grounds to stand on. They have no grounds to call anyone racist when they behave that way. So but let's get rid of this name calling and try to think about forms of education that actually work and deliver better results for children. And that is public charter schools. If we were serious about improving the quality and the rigor and the academic results for education for children, we would convert many traditional public schools, particularly in the failing urban core, the failing inner city schools, to public charter schools. And charter schools are free from the union regulations and from many state laws that stifle the choice of the excellent teachers that are out there. So anyway,
well, you were speaking about the different ways that schools work, and Washington has the one reform. But across the country, there's been this blossoming of innovation, educational innovation just taking place all over the place, empowering parents and where money is following students, which makes sense because children, we say children are really unique, and then we try to shove them into a one size fits all or a one size fits most and all this. And then we pretend that, bureaucracies are the greatest way to cater to this individual student, which is a clever thing by itself.
Yes.
But Corey DeAngelis has a new book out that you were mentioning that is actually, documenting stories across the United States about these changes that are taking place and have kind of flourished in the last few years. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's so tremendous. So last week, Corey DeAngelis, who is a preeminent expert on school choice in the country, he's spoken at Washington Policy Center 2 times.
He was at our last Solutions Summit back in 2019, I think.
That's right. And before that, he came, I think it was 2016, and he presented his research right out of graduate school on the benefits of charter schools to deliver children who are less likely to get in jail and get pregnant and that kind of thing, get diverted from their education path if they go to a public charter school, as that happens. I think that was his PhD research. So he has written this fantastic book called The Parent Revolution, and I recommend it because from a perspective of anyone who cares about education reform, you see over and over again good-spirited efforts to improve the quality of education we deliver to children blocked by the powerful special interests in public education, the unions, not just the unions, but the superintendents and the WASDA, for example, until now has been run very much by union-friendly people. They block reforms in the state legislature over and over again, and they get up and they tell lies about people who are pushing them, like they call them racist, like me, right? Yeah. So it was ridiculous. And so we're frustrated over and over again. And now what happened after COVID was that COVID blew the curtain aside, showed the public what was going on in the public schools, that the public schools had drifted away from their mission to educate children in reading and writing and history and science and math, and were indoctrinating children in lies and not doing what they should be for the children of the country. And so this book tells the accounts of the school choice wins after COVID. I'm just reading about West Virginia. West Virginia was the first state in the nation in 2021 to pass universal school choice for all children. And wow, what a story. Yeah. I mean, this is a thriller. This book is a thriller. It's a political thriller because you see, he provides the names, the woman senator whose name escapes me. I'm writing a blog post about this right now in West Virginia, who got elected as a Republican to this state senate in West Virginia, and she had an autistic child who was not well served by the public schools. She learned then that school choice was the solution. She tried to push a school choice law through the state legislature and failed the first time. There's a whole long story around how she eventually succeeded. She started in 2019 and she didn't succeed until 2021. And you can imagine what happened. There was a threatened strike. They retaliated to one law she tried to pass with a 2-day strike closing the schools. They were so mad at her. And anyway, she came back stronger and better and passed universal school choice in 2021. The state of West Virginia, a strong union state. Now in West Virginia, every family who wants one can get an education savings account. It's called a Hope Scholarship with $4,600 per student and to use on any education purpose that the family thinks is the best fit for that child, including private school tuition. Now that's just one story. He tells the story of what happened in Arizona, what happened in many other states. We now have 12 states that have passed universal school choice. So we have seen an absolute revolution, which is in these red states, only in red states so far. But now, if you have a child with special needs, you can move to Arizona and I think you can get $14,000 to educate your child in a private school. And this is going to cause people to move to these states that have this opportunity for their children. So we're seeing this happen. It's breaking the monopoly of public education in the government. Now education will be publicly funded, but privately delivered in many instances.
And we've been doing that in higher education.
Yes.
For many, many years. Yeah.
And we allow the money to follow the student in those cases.
Right.
Pell Grants, the federal government gives Pell Grants to low-income students to go to college, and they can take it to any college they like, including private religious colleges. That's perfectly okay. And so we allow it in higher education, but we don't allow it in K-12. And we actually allow it in preschool as well. If you are a family on TANF, if you're on welfare, essentially, you can get public funding to send your child to a private religious preschool. That's perfectly okay. But you enter the K-12 system, and that is not allowed. And that is why, and that is changing now. And we have 12 states where that is no longer the case, and more states are on deck. And of course, I'm following, what's the date today? The 22nd. Today's the 21st to the 28th of May. There's a very exciting runoff election in Texas, which will determine.
Oh yeah.
Remember this whole thing?
Yeah.
So there's this. So the governor there is 100% behind school choice. Greg Abbott. He's tried 3 times to pass I think it's a universal school choice bill through the state of Texas, which would mean 5.5 million school children. It would be a huge win if this gets through. It hasn't yet, because rural Texans have blocked it. Rural Republicans in Texas have blocked Greg Abbott's effort, but now they have taken this information to the voters, and they've gotten 10 of those rural Republicans are no longer running for office. I think it was a dozen that was blocking, and there's 2 more up for that are being challenged. And so if they lose their election, there's going to be Katie bar the door. They're going to pass school choice in Texas in the next session. So that's super tremendous. Keep your eye on Texas.
Yeah, it is interesting. You keep thinking about all the things that we take for granted for ourselves, but if you go to a place where they haven't had this experience, like if you don't have a lot of choice in that area, people tend to they don't know what they don't know. It's like I remember going to Oregon for the first time, and I started to gas up my car, and you thought I had just tried to assemble a nuclear bomb, telling me how, hey, you know what, this is against the law, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. And
really?
I've been doing it since I was 14 on various farm equipment. I think this is okay. But the people around there were like, well, this is an important law because it's for safety. And I thought, I think you're the only state in the lower 48, well, and we could expand that. You're the only place that says people can't handle this by themselves. And I don't see a lot of gas stations exploding from this personal
ability. So much of our freedoms are being taken away in the name of safety.
No.
I think we have to start, every time we hear that, we're passing this program for the good of the education of children. You have to really be skeptical, because it also means that the program is expanding state government. It is adding more people to the payrolls and making it difficult to close the program if it doesn't actually work for children. So the best thing to do is to give the money to families directly, so they can decide what's best for their children. And it's happening, and it's coming. And I mean, it may take, the beauty of this is that Washington State can't avoid this. It's like charter schools, right? It tried to avoid. Washington State's powerful union kept out the charter schools for 20 years successfully, and then actually 30 years. But then eventually they had to capitulate and let charter schools happen, because of course it was done through the People's Initiative process, blah, 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 blah. But we actually got charter schools here because so many people have heard how positive they are. And the same thing will happen to Washington State on school choice, because people will hear about the fact that you can go to Arizona and get if you have a child that doesn't have special needs, you get $7,000. You can send your child, that'll really help you send your child to a private school, private religious school, if that's what's best for your family and your child. And this opens up the doors. What's super cool.
Or maybe it's the STEM program or something that was just shut down by various schools here, because the public school just said, hey, that's not fair. We don't want you excelling in this area when other students won't, which is, again, not every student is gifted in that area, right?
Exactly.
The art students may be, gifted in that area and should focus, and mechanical students the other way. it's just a crazy thing. And I think a lot of parents would be excited by that. It's really tough to put the genie back in the bottle. Like,
Yes.
and once you tell people, yeah, you go ahead and gas up by yourself, it would be really hard, I think, for somebody to come along and say, no, this is just too much for you.
You can't gas up.
Right.
You
People just
can't
go, come on.
possibly do it safely. You're gonna blow up your car.
It was the same with the phone companies. Remember,
Yeah.
when everybody had the same phone company, had your rotary phone and
Yeah.
Party Lines and the rest,
Yeah.
and then there was talk about having competition. It was like, whoa, it's gonna destroy everything.
public education.
Oh my gosh, you're
Gonna
never going to be able to
destroy-
pay for your phone bill. And then now we have, a computer in your palm of your hand. And
They always say this is going to take money away from the public schools. Of course, it never does. This is a lie. It's not going to hurt public education. And why should you fear that it would hurt public education? If your public school is fine, you won't take the money and go to a private education. So
it's a hassle, right? Why would you?
huge
You're not going to
hassle.
switch unless
No.
there's a reason to switch.
Right.
Right.
And if you're dissatisfied, why shouldn't you have an option to change?
Yeah.
Why should you be stuck in a system that is not serving your child? That is the basic,
Well, I've seen sorts of
harm
kids
that's being done,
of
families.
kids that were bullied or felt unsafe at a school, and they're stuck in this environment
stuck.
because of their zip code.
Yeah.
And unless the parent moves, which
Yes.
could mean the loss of their job or whatever
Yes.
else.
Yeah.
It's just insane. There's
It's
just no way
insane.
that imagine if that worked for your phone company. It's like, well, I'm going to give my kid my teenager a phone here, and they're getting bullied all the time, but they have to keep that phone. They can't switch. Everyone this is just absurd.
No, right.
But-
And it's absurd and it's
it's
fundamentally
doubly so.
unfair
Yeah.
because rich people have options to school choice. They have the money to send their children to private school if they think that's better. Many rich people keep their kids in public school so they think it's a better option. So rich people make the choice, they have the choice. People who can buy homes in wealthy neighborhoods that have a pretty good public school system, they also have a choice.
Yeah.
But why shouldn't people who really need access to the prosperity and knowledge and joy of a good education that brings you, why shouldn't people without resources have public resources to send their children to private school? There's just no reason against it, except for really it comes down to the interests in the public education system who fear a threat to their monopoly, who don't want to lose their power and their money in the system. So what is this about? We're going to defend the system over the needs of individual children? That's not the values of Washington State.
Yeah, life isn't fair. That doesn't mean that you should use your resources to make it even less fair, and force people into these situations.
Oh, life is hard enough.
Yeah,
The government should be helping families, not restricting them and keeping families stuck in a system that doesn't serve them. That is just wrong on its face. And people are seeing it. And I'm excited because COVID has exposed all this. Now, there is broad dissatisfaction with public education. No longer do I have to make the argument. Let me show you the numbers. They're not learning like they should be. People get it. That's gone. That argument's gone. They've hurt them. They have damaged the brand of public education. And now they continue to do so, trying to close 20 elementary schools. That's 1/4 of the elementary schools in Seattle public schools. 1/4. That is, they should be doing everything they can to keep those schools open and to properly resource those schools. They're calling this the well-resourced program. I can't think of a worse way to provide resources to the schools by closing them, giving them no resources. This is the Orwellian terms. This is the well-resourced school program.
That is much better.
Please.
It sounds much better though. Instead of we're closing your school, we're well resourcing schools.
And yes, because we have too few children in these schools, and we have to put all the schools together with lots of children. We have to close 20 schools, take those 6,000 children and jam them into the other schools where they're probably overcrowded already so that we can give them more resources.
And how much extra time per day are those children now going to be in transit, from one school to the next? Because the schools, if they're no longer in the neighborhood, they're going to be farther away. And we all know how easy it is to get around the Seattle area.
No, that's true. That's a really good point.
It's not only the cost, it's less time with your children.
Yes.
Less time between mom and dad,
Yes.
mom with children.
Well,
and
and
mom
then
dad.
a very smart man who was running for a school board in Seattle, I forgot his name. He had wrote an editorial for the Seattle Times. He said, this is not going to save any money. I mean, closing the schools, the 82% of the spending of the public schools is in the pay and benefits of the people. And they haven't identified which people are going to, it's kind of it's a smokescreen, right? They're closing the schools. That means they're going to have to fire the teachers in those schools, but they're not saying that. They're saying, oh, well, we'll transfer them to other places. Well, please, if you have $100 million hole, you're going to have to fire people. Why don't you just be honest about it?
Yeah.
That is what you're doing. So let's look at who the people are employed in the public schools. And in Seattle Public Schools, only half of them are actually classroom teachers. So let's look at the non-teaching staff and reduce that number. That is the logical thing if we're going to serve the children well. But nobody wants to talk about this. This is so, controversial. Oh my God, we're cutting jobs. Well, who's cutting jobs?
Or look at the
It's
administration.
incompetence of the system in the first place to have overpaid a collective bargaining agreement. They set themselves up to fire people. It's their fault that they did this. So we're just calling it out for what it is.
So start with the negotiator that got you in this situation there to begin with.
Well, that person could lose his job.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you, Liv, for being here again. Thank you for that update. And by the way, we'll have the complete episode up on our YouTube channel. And then we'll have it divided up into smaller bits for social media. And so you can watch for that too. And we'll put them, I think, on the YouTube Shorts. They're also available through our YouTube channel, so you can see it that way as well.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah,
That's
you
great.
bet. All right, and don't forget, in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another episode of Washington Policy on the Go. Any final words?
No, just if you're interested in education policy and all the fights around it, I really recommend you buy Corey DeAngelis's book. Parent Revolution is on Amazon. You can get.
We've got to have Liv put the Amazon link up. You got to do the merch thing. There's put that I forget what it's called.
Is there a way to do that?
Link. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll have Donald help you out with that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thanks.